a very warm welcome to our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern. Begin by acknowledging the mana whenua, Ngāti Whātua. Thank you so much for the warmth of your welcome to this place today, and what a wonderful celebration that we have the opportunity to join in. And I also acknowledge the National Council of Women and the Māori Women's Welfare League for coming together, giving us this opportunity, and also Auckland Council and His Worship the Mayor Phil Goff for joining us in this space today. Today is such an obvious moment of reflection, and I ask you in this moment to think back in your own minds of a woman or women that you admire. A woman who you might consider extraordinary, and why you might think that, and what it is that they've done to have that kind of impact on your life. And if anyone ever asks me to do that, and I get asked often, who's your role model? Who did you look up to growing up? I give an answer that sometimes probably seems quite obvious, and at the same time perhaps not. Mine was my mother. And will always be my mother. Because in the seemingly ordinary state of our lives, my mother has always been extraordinary to me. And she was extraordinary. She made sacrifices on a daily basis for me and for my sister, and I credit her for the fact that I'm here today. But I credit a lot of women for the fact that I am here right now, for the woman who laid a path down for me. And sometimes they might have been considered ordinary, but they weren't. They have always been extraordinary. There were 25,000 women, in fact, who signed a petition, who also probably thought that they were ordinary. They were dressmakers, they were shopkeepers, they were mothers, sisters, grandmothers. And they signed a petition sometimes at great cost to themselves, with the unknown of whether or not it would ever succeed. They were extraordinary. And I want to share with you, if you indulge me, the story of one of them. This is the story of a woman who in the 1870s made a name for herself as a walker. She was also one of the people who signed the petition in 1893, but she was also a walker. Walking, I hear you gasp. Well, to be fair, in those days, it was called being a pedestrian, and it was the sporting domain of men. That was until in 1872, a young woman by the name of Catherine embarked on the enormous journey to New Zealand, aged just 19. Now, being a sprightly woman, she managed to snag herself a dapper young man named Joseph on the journey. Now, Joseph wasn't just a 30-year-old railway plate slayer from Berkshire, he was a pedestrian too. The most famous of pedestrians, though, at that time came from Newmarket, London. He had managed to walk 1,000 miles in 1,000 hours by walking 1 mile every hour. And it was that feat that Joseph wanted to replicate when he came to New Zealand. Now, that wasn't remarkable. The remarkable fact was that Catherine wanted to too. A petite 44 kgs, Catherine decided she would take to the field and walk a half mile every hour. The novelty was almost too much. In particular, her very neat walking costume caught the eye of local papers. It featured bloomers, a high-necked ruffled top complete with pearls, and leather boots. You might ask how I know that. Basically because a copy of her, a picture of her, in her neat pedestrian garb, was sent to the British Weekly Illustrated Sporting and Dramatic News, basically the Sports Illustrated of the day. Now, only did they publish it, they included a quote from a supporter that called her the best bit of puck that ever wore petticoats. 4 years after arriving on New Zealand shores, she was setting records. In 1876, what was then the City Hall of Auckland filled out with a crowd of people there to see Catherine attempt to walk 100 miles in 24 hours. The hall had been measured out. She would have to do 2,833 circuits. The Herald at the time reported that her, quote, physique did not give token of much power of performance, but she was, quote, pleasing and of good figure. At 8:30, she stepped out in her costume and began her race. Now, as you can imagine, the crowd thinned a bit. After all, she was just walking in a circle. For a time, a drunk sailor walked with her. But by 6:30 the next day, Catherine was ready for the home straight. She had 2.5 miles to go. The hall filled up. A band began to play. As she rounded the bend in her last lap, hats and handkerchiefs flew into the air and the applause was deafening. She was, at the time, the greatest female pedestrian in the world. She was also my great-great-grandmother. And her signature was on that petition in 1893. Now, I'm not telling you that story to show off my family's amazing sporting prowess. It basically began and ended with Catherine. But how many of our courageous but sometimes unusual stories do we know and tell? And do they always have to be great feats, things that others have never achieved before, in order for them to be newsworthy or noteworthy? I don't believe they do. Sometimes stories of courage are simple but beautiful. The stories of some of our relatives, the women before us, may appear unremarkable. But within the ordinary sits the extraordinary. Women who just got on with it, but had a story to inspire as they went. Catherine, Kate Shepherd, Elizabeth Mabel, Whetu Tirakatini Sullivan, Helen Clark, they're all part of a journey to equality that we're continuing to this day. The issues they fought for, economic independence, freedom from violence, equal pay, they are all issues we continue to grapple with. And like many, my great-great-grandmother, Catherine, and the thousands of other women who signed that petition, women today are living their own extraordinary story. And it's to them that we owe progress. Ordinary women taking leaps of faith to fight and win battles for pay equity, against domestic violence, and for the right to choose to be a carer, to have a career, to be a mother. As we celebrate 125 years of suffrage, I choose to honour these modern, extraordinary